Oh my gosh, y'all, we are talking to Sue Becker. I feel like she's a celebrity in our
She is.
world.
She is. If you live in Atlanta, she is a celebrity.
we are. It's like I've been hearing your name for 25 years, and here I am, like, getting the privilege to talk to you. She is like the person behind Bread Beckers, which everybody knows Bread Beckers. If you've ever thought about making bread in your life.
Yep.
And certainly if you've ever thought about milling bread, you've heard her name and you've heard the last name for sure. But it is such an honor to talk to you.
It really
I just feel
is.
like you have, I mean, Karen just prayed for Sue and she said she's a city on a hill. And I feel like you're a city on a hill when it comes to health and wellness. And we're just blessed. Honestly, our community, I feel like, people who are wanting more from the Lord, a lot of times that 100% includes your body, which has kind of been forgotten in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, just more from Jesus, forget your body. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Like, we are the temple of the living God, and the temple is meant to be well. And if inheritance is what he paid for, then we should be the healthiest of everyone, right?
Yes, we should.
So
yes,
I just can't wait. I'm like, tell us all the things, Sue, right
We're just
now.
going to stop talking, and we'll just wind you up and go.
Where do you want me to start?
Well, give us a little bit of how, I know you've got 5 kids, and like how it all happened. How did you become the bread lady, 1 or 2 minutes. And then and then how has that progressed into health and wellness?
Yes. Well, let me correct you. I have 9 children,
Oh,
and I have my
9.
19th grandchild on the way.
19.
But let's go back.
Wait, I thought you just had 5. Oh my gosh,
No.
sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe when you had your 5th child.
Yes, we started.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Let me
Yes.
clarify that.
So,
Yes.
okay, so I'll do it as fast as I can. Way back 50 something years ago, graduated high school, went off to the University of Georgia as a pre-med student.
Okay.
Got there and went, I don't want to be in school that long, and I knew I didn't want that grueling a career after I graduated.
Yeah.
I knew I ultimately wanted to be a wife and a mother.
Yeah.
Not saying you can't be a doctor and be a wife and a mother. I know plenty of great doctors that are wives and mothers, but that wasn't the path that I wanted to take. But I did love the human body, loved studying physiology, biochemistry, how it worked. And of course, I had the great aspiration of saving the world, making everybody well.
Yes.
But changed my major, got accepted into pharmacy school, spent 1 quarter there and went, this isn't really what I want to do either.
Wow.
And as a junior in college, you got to start kind of, making up your mind.
Picking.
So actually got led to food science, which was an up and coming industry at the time with a wide open field. So I focused more on microbiology. I still needed all my organic chemistry and biochemistry and all that. So after graduating University of Georgia, I worked for Kraft Foods as a microbiologist for almost 5 years there. Had my first child and became a stay-at-home mom, which I loved. But even after graduating, I just continued to study.
Wow.
I loved the body. I loved figuring out how things work. My basic mindset was if something's not working, I'm not getting a nutrient I needed. And way back then, the focus was more on supplementation.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of supplementation. I tried a lot of things, but I ate pretty healthy for the most part. When my first child was born, found a nutritionally minded pediatrician, made all my own baby food, nursed my babies, and didn't eat junk and cut out caffeine, all the things. And so this was just my mindset. And so fed my family healthy food, then went on to have 5 children. And then in 1991, I was introduced to a healthy eating concept that radically changed my life.
Right.
In a publication that I had subscribed to, I read the history of white flour, how it came about, the invention of the steel rolling mills, the sifting away of the bran and germ, and the diseases that became epidemic when we lost the bran and germ from our flour because of the B vitamins and the iron and the minerals that were there. And then in that same journal, the history of white flour is presented, but then a short discussion of the common diseases that plague most Americans, like constipation, varicose veins, heart disease, cancer, diverticulitis, diabetes, all these, just a little brief discussion, and how it's related to our consumption of the wonderful white flour and chemically processed, commercially milled flour. This, with my science background and my passion for studying it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is real. And I was introduced to the whole concept of being able to mill my own flour with an in-home grain mill. So that was way back in 1991. So you're right. It's been 34 years I've been on this journey, and bought a grain mill. My husband actually gave me a grain mill for my birthday. I bought, made bread. That mill came in, I ground flour, I made bread, and I pooped the next morning, and it was like, what? This is amazing.
And if you suffer from constipation, I'm telling you, that is like victory.
But yes, it is. And somewhere I read that America's the most constipated nation in the world, and I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah,
but
believe
anyway.
it.
But in just the first month, I saw my dependence on antihistamines went away, my chronic battle now over the years. But before Bread, I used to have strep throat at least twice a year.
Wow.
And was on antibiotics, and it caused just a lot of turmoil in my
gut.
digestive system. And I don't remember when I've had strep throat. It was before Bread, so 35 years not had that. And so it just saw all these changes in myself in just the first month. I had, like I said, 5 young children at the time. And when you have that many kids and you're active in church and, homeschool things, if one of them got sick, they'd all get sick before Bread.
Yeah.
Afterwards, none of them have had ear infections since Bread.
Wow.
And I noticed that they just didn't get sick that much. And if one got sick, it didn't mean the whole family got sick. So that was a real eye-opening,
And what about,
plus.
I know I've heard you mention even warts. Tell me why warts?
Oh, we just had
warts
one
are a
birthday.
virus.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that I learned in my studies, one of the richest food sources of vitamin E is, sorry, we're next door. So we have some store noise going on, and I just heard a loud outburst. I'm like, go tell them to be quiet.
Happy people.
But
Happy
anyway,
people.
vitamin E is pretty fascinating. So before Bread, my oldest daughter got warts, and I had never had them, and so I was like, what in the world is this? Took her to the doctor. He said, don't worry about it, they're a virus, they should run their course and go away. So I didn't worry about it. Well, 2 years later, she's still got them, and they've spread, and some of them have gotten really big, painful, one back on the back of her heel. So I'll make a long story short, but for months, back and forth to a specialist.
Sure.
I thought we were going to get them burned off, and I got very distressed finally.
Yeah.
And at the last visit, here's my 5-year-old daughter. He was going to put her to sleep, tie her up with a papoose, and burn the warts off because she was so distraught and scared of going to the doctor each time. So on the way home, I just remember I was just riding along, and I saw a line in one of the nutrition books that I had read, just as clear as day, just saw it.
Yeah.
Vitamin E's been known to get rid of warts. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So went home, I had vitamin E, but at home I took it as a supplement because in my studies after graduation, I had read a lot about vitamin E helping the female reproductive system. I didn't have cycles, so I started taking vitamin E.
Had
started having cycles,
Oh my gosh,
started
I feel
being
like
able
this
to get
conversation
pregnant.
is like for me. I mean,
Wow.
my kids have warts, and we're I mean, I'm
Well,
like,
wow.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So anyway, went home and started giving Ashley vitamin E. My son had started getting warts because they are a virus. They are
Yes.
contagious, not by
Yes.
touching them, but a lot of times you'll pick it up in locker rooms, gym floors, around swimming
Sure.
pools, things like that. But anyway, within a week, my son Caleb's warts, because he had just started getting them, went completely away. My daughter's warts took about 3 weeks. So
What?
fast forward 3 years, my third child starts getting warts. I'm like, what in the heck is this,
Yeah.
And, but so I was like, oh, I know what to do. Now, mind you, this is before Bread. So I started giving him vitamin E supplements. Well, all would have been well if Joshua could have just swallowed them. Just
Right.
swallow. It's a tiny little capsule. It's gelatin. Just come on. Oh no, gag, throw
Yes.
up. Couldn't do it. Well, by the time Joshua was 3, he had 2 younger siblings. So we had 5 children before Bread, not high energy, just getting through the day. I'm like, I don't care. Warts are the least of my worries.
Right.
So a couple of years go by. They had spread all over his fingers. One was so large it was about to push his fingernail off. In comes the mill. The mill comes into our home. Wheat is one of the richest food sources of vitamin E that there is. Many
Wow.
vitamin E supplements are made from wheat germ oil. but it needs to be freshly milled or the nutrients tend to oxidize.
Right.
Sometime in that first month, no vitamin E supplements, I looked down and all of his warts were gone.
Oh,
Isn't that
So,
so cool?
I went back
mean,
to
you have
my-
story after story.
like I'm about
of
to
that.
order a meal online right now. I'm
We
driving to
have
Bread Beckers.
hundreds of wart stories. I mean, one lady,
Isn't
her
that
daughter,
wild?
over 500 warts. And they had
What?
burned them all off. She had them for 5 years. Within 2.5 weeks of milling her flour and making her bread, all the warts were gone.
Wow.
So I began to dig, and I learned that vitamin E, we've all heard of antioxidants.
Yeah.
Well, it protects the integrity of every cell in your body.
Right.
What we don't realize is our cells are made up of a fat and a protein layer. If that fat is compromised because of oxidation, which is a natural thing, but vitamin E is there to protect and
Right.
keep that oxidation from happening. Therefore, it protects the integrity of our cell membranes. The only way a virus can reproduce is it has to penetrate our cell membrane. And it has to use our cells' DNA to reproduce. Bacteria can reproduce on their own, but a virus has to use our cells.
I didn't know
If
that.
the cell wall, if the cell membrane is compromised, then you're more susceptible to a viral invasion. Does that?
Wow.
That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
biochemistry lesson in a nutshell.
No,
but
love
yeah,
it.
totally.
that's the way it is, and so
And you
that's
really
what
can't overdose eating bread, but you can on supplementation. Like you can take too much, right? Or is that hard to do?
Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, yes. Vitamin E is so used by the body because we're breathing. You know, we're
Right.
constantly breathing oxygen.
Okay.
So it helps deliver pure oxygen to our cells, but then helps us protect ourselves,
Wow,
from
wow.
oxidation.
And not
So
rubbing
it'd be a
rubbing
little
on
hard.
not rubbing
Huh?
on topically doesn't help.
I
It's
have
more
had
internal,
some
right?
people say that does, but you gotta attack the virus inside
Internally.
as well and protect your cell membranes. So the encouraging thing to me, so I saw my child's warts go away in a month, and I knew it was the bread because of what had happened before with the vitamin E supplements.
Yeah.
I knew.
Yeah.
So I just shared that in my lineup of things that we saw with the bread, but. I forget where I was going with this,
No,
but
that's-
it's
it's
a biochemical
fascinating.
thing. Vitamin E is a very, very powerful nutrient that our body needs, and unfortunately, in processed food, it's been virtually eliminated.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder if that's why we see so many diversified health benefits when people call me and go, it's the bread, it's got to be the bread. And I saw this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
because it depends genetically. Where is your cell weakness?
That's right.
Where is your, cell
yeah,
weakness? Are you going to be
gosh.
prone like I was to strep throat all the time and colds and
Yeah.
flu and viruses? Oh, I know what I wanted to say. But what encourages me and what I like to share with people is if changing the bread you're eating to freshly milled flour can get rid of a virus that you've had 5, 6, some people 10, 12 years in just 2 weeks, what other viruses is it protecting from?
Seriously.
Yeah.
How much more is it boosting our immune system and ability to resist disease and viruses? And that's what I saw with my children. In 25 years of raising 9 children, we only needed 2 doctor visits. 3 if you count one for an ingrown toenail. I don't really count that one. But
So
2 doctor visits. Some people go twice a week, twice a day, especially with that many children.
So, Sue, help us understand why getting like a really great, healthy bread from the baker down the street, or using it. I want you to talk about, it says it's enriched. If I got an enriched wheat flour loaf from the grocery store.
Yeah.
Why is that not the same thing as milling your own wheat? And why do you have to, why does it have to be milled? What's the difference? The whole explain the whole oxidation thing, because that was fascinating
so
for me.
that's something I learned in that first publication and have just continued to learn. So a kernel of grain, has the bran on the outside, the germ on the way in the interior, and then everything else is what's called the endosperm, and that's the white flour. The bran is loaded with fiber, minerals, protein. I mean, it's just vitamins. It's just full
Sue,
of.
just pause right there. I think this is so scriptural, which is why I really love for people to hear this. You talked about in Genesis how there are fruits
Yes.
and vegetables with seeds,
Yeah.
and then there are
Seeds.
to
Yes.
actually help us nourish the body. Can you just speak to that? Because that was like so fascinating to me listening to you. I was like, what?
So grains are seeds, and seeds are storable. So that's what I saw God in such a huge way.
Yes.
A perfect provision. In Genesis 1:29, he says, I've given you two types of food. Plants that bear fruit that have the seed in them, and plants that bear seed. Fruits and vegetables, very, very nutritious, full of vitamins, full of minerals, full of enzymes, fiber, mostly soluble fiber. But what happens to them over time? They decay.
They rot,
right?
They rot.
Very
They're
quickly.
losing nutritional value every day, even hanging on the tree, that we store them. Not so with the plants that bear seed for our food. Seeds are storable.
Right.
That bran protects the integrity and life of the seed. The germ that's the germ where the sprout comes from, loaded with vitamin E, loaded with fatty acids. And then, like I said, everything else is endosperm, protein and starch, and that's the white flour. So left whole and intact, seeds are storable. And that's what God gave us. We had to have food in season, but we had to be able to have food that was storable during famine or just when
winter.
Winter,
Right.
when fruits and vegetables aren't available. But once you break that kernel of grain open, like you mill it into flour, then all those vitamins, minerals, those fats and oils, they're all exposed to the air, and oxidation takes place. You don't have to be a food scientist to understand oxidation.
Right.
You've all cut an avocado and seen it turn dark, and that's because of the fat. So those oils go rancid, they oxidize, they lose nutritional value. So in the late 1800s, they discovered if we sift the bran and germ away and take away all that oil and all those vitamins and all those minerals and just leave the protein and starch part, the endosperm, the white flour, the flour won't spoil. So it led to the invention of the huge steel rolling mills that virtually displaced the local millers. Used to be that communities were built up around the miller.
Yeah.
Y'all
So
are from
neat.
Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Powell Mill Road, Rope Mill Road, Pools Mill Road. Do you ever think about those were mill roads? Yeah. Mills were there and communities were
Oh my
built
gosh,
up.
paper mill, yes. There's a mill over there on Paper Mill, old mill by the water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yes,
My
they were
gosh.
either run by water or animal power, and they produced a lot of, and yes, you did have lumber
Corn and
mills and
grits
different types of mills.
Yeah.
But communities were built up. People bought their flour from the local miller, and they used it up. Families were larger then, so they used it up before it would spoil.
Right.
So this put the local millers out of business because everybody went, hallelujah, don't need to mill my own flour anymore. And white bread and white flour became, for the first time, food for everybody, rich and poor alike. Up until that time, it was reserved for the wealthy, for the royalty. The Egyptians learned how to make sieves that would sift the bran and germ away. Jesus told Peter, Satan's asked to sift you as wheat, sift the bran and germ out and leave you, I say, as a worthless lump of white flour. It's pretty fascinating. But so what they didn't expect, because the scripture tells us, there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof is death.
Yeah.
What they didn't expect was when white flour now became food for rich and poor alike, by about 1905, 1910, surely by 1920, that was it. That was the bread of the people.
Yeah.
3 diseases became epidemic. Beriberi is a vitamin B1 deficiency, and it results in nervous disorders, pellagra, skin issues, digestive issues, mental insanity, dementia.
Isn't that weird?
First case of pellagra was actually diagnosed here in Atlanta, Georgia. And the research that I read said mental institutions were literally overflowing in the southeastern United States, Georgia and South Carolina. They didn't have enough beds to house the patients. Anemia was another problem. They traced it to the missing vitamins and minerals from the flour that when they took the bran and germ away. Went to the miller, said, put it back in, put it back together. And they're like, no. We're selling the bran and germ to the cattle feed industry. We're not going to give up that lucrative market. It took almost 50 years. It was 1948. The government stepped in and said, you have to enrich the flour then. You got to replace those missing B vitamins.
Wow.
So here was my eye-opening experience as a food scientist. When I read enriched on a bread label or flour label or whatever, I was like, wow, us food scientists, we're doing people a favor. We're making it better than it would have been had we not messed with it. That is not the case. For the 25, 30, maybe even 40 nutrients that are lost when they take away the bran and germ, and not to mention the fiber, they only required them to put 4 back in. 4.
Wow.
That's B1, B2, B3, and iron to prevent supposedly beriberi and pellagra and anemia. It would take another 50 years of them watching the rising incidence of birth defects before they would make them put the folic acid back in. Here's the problem.
It's not folate.
Those are
Synthetic.
synthetically produced vitamins and minerals.
Right.
And a lot of times you can't
Process.
utilize them. You can't synthesize them. And not only that, the B complex is a huge family. I know there's
Yes.
over 17. And if you take one without the other, you can actually disrupt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your
And that's
need
like
and-
me getting B12
Wow.
shots. It's just so not comprehensive enough.
Yeah.
So I wonder
Right.
if me milling bread, because I have a vitamin
Yeah.
B deficiency. Duh.
Yeah. Well, here's the cool thing. So not only are grains and beans, and when I say bread, it can be grains and beans. It can be a pot of black-eyed peas and rice is bread to me. If it's from a seed.
Right.
Okay.
They are high in all the B vitamins, or most all of them. And no amount of replacement has ever brought that flour back up to where it needed to be
And
in
what
the
do you
enriched.
say to like people like Dr. Gundry, who's like anti-beans, I mean, he is like the
Really?
police when it comes to
Tell-
anything seed related like that. He says it perforates the gut. You know, I mean, I know you know Dr. Gundry. I mean, that's like his
Yes.
big thing. I'm just like,
Huh.
how do you rationalize
it
all
doesn't
that?
line up with God's word, and it doesn't
know.
line up with what God has given us as food. He
Yeah.
says very clearly, I've given you plants that bear seed for your food. And you just tell that to people around the world that live on grains and beans.
I
And here's
know.
the thing else about your B vitamins. First of all, wheat is very healing to the gut. The proteins that are there, the vitamin E, it's very healing. But also, so not only are your grains and beans high in B vitamins, but the undigested fiber,
Right.
the insoluble fiber, doesn't get digested through your normal system, gets dumped into your large intestine. Then those good probiotic organisms that live in your gut, they produce from that fermentation of that undigested fiber, they produce a massive amount of B vitamins. In fact, I just
Wow.
read yesterday, they only those organisms make vitamin B12 to be assimilated by your body. Isn't that pretty fascinating?
I don't doubt it
Okay,
because I feel
yeah.
like my B12 is just a shot in the dark. I'm like, what a waste.
I know.
Sorry.
You know,
I digress.
it's so frustrating because,
Yeah, it
You know,
is.
I'd say there's a good 50%, you know, of our personal friends that won't touch wheat or at a minimum are gluten free. So, Sue, help us understand why is there such a disconnect between what you're saying, which sounds totally
Yeah.
right, and what these other people are saying is avoid wheat at all costs, and that our wheat supply is completely corrupted by
Right.
pesticides
Yeah.
and all that.
GMO.
How do we get around? Okay, help me understand
It's
that.
very difficult. It's wonderful that we have, hold your phone. You have so much information
Yeah.
at your fingertips, literally. Problem is, doesn't take but one person, the gossip game, one person to print or publish some false information. First of all, I'll tell you this, wheat is not genetically modified. Not yet.
It's
GMO
not?
wheat was
Okay.
just approved for testing, but that was just this year. It will take years
Okay.
to be seen on the market, and there's some thoughts that it's not even going to be here. But there is no genetically modified wheat right now
Okay.
in the country.
But
Another-
glyphosate though, like round it up.
That's a misnomer too.
Okay.
And I just did a podcast with a lady that was a wheat farmer, and she goes, "That makes me so mad. It's not done. We do not spray wheat with Roundup or glyphosate. Wheat is not Roundup ready." And what that means is, like corn and soybeans that have been genetically modified, they modified them so they would be Roundup ready. So you could go
wow.
in and spray that field. It would kill the weeds, but wouldn't kill the corn or the soybeans. Wheat is not genetically modified. It is not Roundup ready. So if you spray a field, it's going to kill it. It's going to kill it. So that is not done. And that is that's a misnomer. That is misinformation that was propagated and then just, sped through. Now, Roundup's a problem in this country, the way they use it in farming techniques, but that is not done to wheat.
Okay.
The other thing is, well, there's several things. They're not differentiating the bread that's in the store from wheat. They're calling that wheat.
Yes.
That'd be like me calling this piece of paper a tree.
Okay.
This is not a tree. It
Right.
was made from a tree pretty far removed. And so the problem is the bread in the store has had all the bran and germ removed, even if it's enriched. And even what's called whole grain, they can add so many chemicals. I have a loaf of 100% whole grain, very well-known brand back on the shelf that I use as a visual aid. It's been there for 3 years. It hasn't molded yet. The last loaf I had ended up disintegrating, just turning to dust. What? My bread doesn't do that. So there is a huge difference in the bread that you make from freshly milled flour and the bread you're finding in the store. And then gluten. We need to talk about what gluten is. There are two unique.
Wait, before you go on to gluten, help me understand then, based on what you've just said about wheat, what we all kind of have this conversation about is wheat bothers us when we're in America, but when we go to Europe, everybody always says, I have no problem. I can eat bread the whole time I'm there. I don't have any issues with my gut. Why is their wheat different?
No, it's not really different. It's what they're doing to the flour. There's so much done here. That's like I said, when they sifted the bran and germ away, they didn't stop there because the residual oils caused the flour to turn yellow a little bit. So they decided to bleach it. A product called nitrogen trichloride was used for more than 25 years till they discovered it caused seizures in dogs. So they still let them use a chlorine derivative. Benzoyl peroxide is another thing that our flour is exposed to. Bromates, which cause liver and thyroid issues, that's exposed. It's a dough enhancer. So there's a lot of things that's done to our flour and then even our bread, a lot of preservatives and things and chemicals that we're allowed to put in that in Europe they don't allow it. So that's the biggest thing there.